So the Ontario College of Psychologists has told Jordan Peterson that he either undergo retraining for social media etiquette or lose his license to practice as a clinical psychologist. This follows a number of complaints by people who don't like his online posts, one of which is a retweet of something I posted, another is a criticism of Justin Trudeau. Now, it should go without saying that in a free country, professionals should not lose their jobs and licenses because they express a political opinion contrary to the licensing body that's mandated by the government.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Talk about headlines that, I'm not surprised to see in 2023. But man, if this was 10 or 20 years ago, I would honestly laugh if somebody said that, legitimate scientists, doctors, psychologists, they would be subject to losing their licenses or being censored from social media, from major platforms, simply for disagreeing with the government and the establishment. I would have laughed. I would have said, I don't know, man. I don't think we were ever going to get to that point. Not in the West, right? Not in the West. Maybe in a country like China, someone like that. That definitely probably happens. Okay, but not in the West. Okay, we supposed to believe in freedom. But unfortunately, the COVID pandemic of 2020 and 2021 has proven that the West, which is supposed to have the freest countries, the freest societies in the world, okay, we're supposed to be a beacon of what freedom means. We're not that free, right? We're not that free at all, especially when it comes to freedom of speech. Because during COVID, we saw what happened to doctors like Dr. Robert Malone, the doctors that wrote the Great Barrington Declaration, that came out and gave opinions that are contrary to the Biden administration and the medical establishment on COVID. A lot of things they said turned out to be not off base. However, they were punished for it anyways, despite the fact that, again, these are actual licensed professionals, leaders in the field. And lo and behold, we have this story right here about Jordan Peterson, who is a licensed psychologist, in which we have the same thing happening. This guy could lose his license for having the wrong opinion. In fact, it is so bad that they are trying to, quote, re-educate him on social media, right? They're trying to put this man in a re-education camp for simply having the wrong opinion. Yeah, this is some crazy stuff. And I want to get into that. But before I get into that, I'll let the leader of the official opposition party of Canada, Pierre Poilievre, explain what's going on with Jordan Peterson and the, College of Psychiatry in Canada, the official government body responsible for Jordan Peterson's license. I'll let him explain exactly what's happening here so you guys get a better understanding of what's going on. Take a look.
So the Ontario College of Psychologists has told Jordan Peterson that he either undergo retraining for social media etiquette or lose his license to practice as a clinical psychologist. This follows a number of complaints by people who don't like his online posts, one of which is a retweet of something I posted, another is a criticism of Justin Trudeau. Now, it should go without saying that in a free country, professionals should not lose their jobs and licenses because they express a political opinion contrary to the licensing body that's mandated by the government. But of course, in saying this, my liberal critics in the media will of course say, well, Poilievre agrees with freedom of speech for someone like Dr. Peterson, therefore he must endorse everything Dr. Peterson has ever said. Well, of course not. I don't endorse 100% of everything anyone has ever said. There's no two people in the world who agree 100% of the time on 100% of things. And so I'm sure there is something he's posted that I do object to, but that is not the point, because freedom of speech only matters when you disagree. I mean, if we all agreed, we wouldn't need freedom of speech because no one has ever tried to censor someone for saying something that they agree with. It is only when there is a disagreement that it matters. And that's what distinguishes Canada, a free country, from dictatorships. Dictators don't censor things their citizens say that the dictator agrees with, only things they disagree with. Here in Canada, though, unfortunately, through the cancel culture and the woke movement we've seen at university campuses and in the media, and now increasingly in big, powerful corporations, and most recently with a professional licensing body, we're seeing the idea that someone can lose their job, their status, their ability to study because they express something that is contrary to the government line. Now, I don't believe that is the Canada we want. We have Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. To be or not to be, that is the question. And the answer is that, as Voltaire has been quoted as saying, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to my death your right to say it.
Yeah, I think what this guy said was spot on, right? Especially the part about how you don't 100% agree with what somebody else says. Okay, just because you defend their right to freedom of speech doesn't mean you agree with what they said. And that guy, I disagree with what he said about Canada being a free country. Right? Canada is not a free country, and it is ran by a dictator. That dictator's name is Justin Trudeau, and he proved that to be the case during the COVID pandemic, specifically his crackdown on the freedom truckers. Okay, that, in my opinion, was a awakening to the fact that, again, Canada is not a free country, and it is under a dictatorship, in my opinion, right? That's just my opinion. The U.S. is not that far behind, right? We have checks and balances here that keeps Biden from being the dictator that he wants to be. But again, the Democrats are trying to erode those checks and balances almost every single day. That is the main thing that they're working towards, okay? The modern day definition of liberal really is just fascist, right? That's what it has become. It's become fascism. So with that being said, let's read a little bit more about this and some of the thought crimes that got Jordan Peterson in hot water with this official licensing body that is, I believe, sponsored by the government, right? So essentially the government is telling Jordan Peterson that, you said the wrong things, therefore we're going to take away your license. We're going to punish you for your speech. Again, absolutely unheard of in a so-called free country. The proposed training is not just some box-ticking exercise. The college has provided a specified continuing education or remedial program for Peterson to complete so that he can review, reflect on, and ameliorate his professionalism in public statements. And this re-education will cost him up to $225 per hour. So AKA, it's a brainwashing course, right? We got to retrain your brain, okay, on how to think, on what to say and what not to say. Amazing. There is no pretense from the Ontario College of Psychologists that any of this is about the quality of Peterson's clinical practice. None of the complaints against them is from a former client. It is quite literally his political views that are being targeted. Yeah, so there was a few woke revolutionaries that basically spammed the college's kind of hotline, right? Snitching hotline to report, speech they don't like that come from psychologists that are licensed in Canada. And basically they're using that as an excuse to go after Jordan Peterson because, again, they don't like his politics. Peterson's alleged thought crimes include his opposition to authoritarian lockdown policies and his criticisms of lockdown-loving leaders, Justin Trudeau and Jacinda Ardern. The college also alleges that he is sexist, transphobic, and a climate change denialist. As Peterson summarizes, quote, every single accusation is not only independent of my clinical practice, but explicitly political. Facts. Facts. Apparently, misgendering Elliot Page is, that is a cause for losing your psychology license. Peterson says he will fight the accusations and will not submit himself to the re-education program, even if it means losing his license. He has also vowed to publish every piece of correspondence he receives from the Ontario College of Psychologists. It will be interesting to see how this witch hunt progresses. Realistically, the college's demand is no threat to Peterson. The fee for the training is a pittance to the best-selling author. His speaking tours will not be canceled over this, and his books will continue to sell. His fan base will not turn against him because of these spurious accusations. Indeed, his public fight with the Ontario College of Psychologists will most likely bolster his reputation as an anti-woke warrior and sink the college's standing in the eyes of most right-thinking people. Right thinking, right? There's a double meaning to that, right? Both of those meanings are correct. Nonetheless, this threat of re-education will still have a chilling effect. It sends a warning to those lower down the pecking order, either in academia or in clinical psychotherapy, that the views espoused by Peterson will not be tolerated, that dissenting from progressive orthodoxies could lead to professional actions that could cost someone their reputation or even their livelihood. As Peterson points out, what makes you think that something similar wouldn't happen to you? I agree with that. I think that this is a dangerous precedent. This is, again, a precedent that we've seen be set by the COVID pandemic, where, again, you had, doctors, medical professionals, MDs, come out here and, give opinions about the pandemic, the vaccines, COVID, that were different than the Biden administration, or that were different to what Fauci said or what the CDC said, and they got punished for it. They got smeared for it. Okay, they were accused of spreading misinformation / disinformation when the science on COVID wasn't settled then and is still not settled now, right? Science is always changing over time. However, that went out the door when it came to the mandates and edicts of Fauci and the CDC. They were the science. Anything they said were the science, even though they quite clearly were wrong on a lot of things they said. They were frequently wrong. No. They are the science. And if you disagree with Fauci, then you are disagreeing with the science. Again, this is the type of stuff that we're seeing happening in our society. We're moving closer and closer and closer to authoritarianism in the West. So let's read here, because Jordan Peterson actually wrote about this in the National Post, and these are his own words about what's happening to him. So let's read here. Every single one of these accusations and now accepted evidence of my professional misconduct is independent of my clinical practice, which, by the way, has been suspended since 2017, when my rising notoriety or fame made continuing as a private therapist practically and ethically impossible. Every single accusation is not only independent of my clinical practice, but explicitly political. And not only that, unidirectionally, explicitly political. Every single thing I have been sentenced to correction for is sufficiently leftist. Politically, I'm simply too classically liberal, or even more unforgivably conservative. Yeah, so classical liberalism and conservatism has basically become the same thing, right? And not because it's actually really the same thing, but because the left has become so far left that the lines between classical liberalism and conservatism have become blurred to basically mean the same thing. Like, for example, Bill Maher is a classical liberal, but Cenk Uygur, who's a far left, basically communist, has said that he's conservative, right? Joe Rogan, who's a classical liberal, is conservative. Elon Musk, who's a classical liberal, is conservative. It's just amazing how politics have changed because of how far left the left has become. For criticizing our prime minister and his cronies and peers for retweeting Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the official opposition in Canada, and for holding and for daring to express reprehensible political views, I have now been convicted by the College of Psychologists of harming people in some manner serious enough to justify my forced re-education. Now that I have refused, I will definitely face further exceptionally public, demanding, time-consuming, and expensive disciplinary action, including the suspension of my license. This, despite the fact that none of the people whose complaints are being currently pursued were ever clients of mine, or even new clients of mine, or even knew or were antiquated with any of the people they claim I was harming. This, despite the fact, and please attend to this, that half of the people who levied such complaints falsely claim that they had in fact been or currently are clients of mine. Well, I mean, it's the woke mob, right? The woke mob feels like that anything that you say they disagree with is dangerous, that it is personal harm, right? So again, that's not a surprise. it may be of some interest to note that I wrote Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this week informing him of the situation. Here's the letter for public consideration, which by necessity repeats some of what I have just covered in this introduction. Yeah, so Jordan Peterson is basically saying that, look, he's not going to comply, right? He's saying, look, in any case, I'm not complying. I'm not submitting to re-education. I am not admitting that my viewpoints, many of which have, by the way, been entirely justified by the facts that have emerged since the complaints were levied, were either wrong or unprofessional. I'm going to say what I have to say and let the chips fall where they will. I have done nothing to compromise those in my care. Quite the contrary, I have served all my clients and the millions of people I'm communicating with to the best of my ability and in good faith, and that's that. So basically saying, look, I'm not caving to the mob, right? He shouldn't cave to the mob. And the reason why is because if he caves to the mob, all it does is it emboldens the mob to try to cancel people even more, because they know that all we got to do is complain, right? It ain't got to be a lot of them, just a few of them, just a handful of them. All they got to do is complain, and then you can make somebody lose their license because you disagree with them politically. And for Jordan Peterson, you know, him losing his license doesn't really hurt him all that much outside of his professional credentials, which he doesn't need, right, to do what he does. You know, for him, he can kind of afford to take the L here, which really is a W, right? If he decides to go all the way through with it and say, you know what, I'm not going to, you know, take your re-education course. I don't care if I lose my license. Basically, he's saying, look, I'm not going to back down. And if he makes a big thing out of it, this college could face a whole lot of backlash for it. Because, again, this is what I would kind of define as fascism, right? Again, you have basically an arm of the government, an institution that's sponsored by the government, punishing people for their free speech. What he said had nothing to do with his clinical practice or anything like that. He just simply stated his political opinions, and you should not be punished for simply stating your political opinions when it comes to your professional license, that is. Again, it's not like he works for them or he has, you know, a job or anything like that. If he owns his own practice, whether or not clients decide to hire him as, you know, their psychologist or whatever, that's up to them, right? But he's not really even practicing. And, you know, I mean, again, this is not like he did something on a job or anything like that. They're simply threatening to take away his license, trying to re-educate him as a way to put him in line, right? To send a message to anybody else that's thinking about being outspoken and thinking for yourself, like Jordan Peterson, that, hey, don't do this, right? If you do this as a professional, right, we're going to take away your license, which, again, is a very scary thing, right? It is very scary that this is the world that we're living in here, where academics are being punished for thinking the wrong thing or believing the wrong thing, when, you know, academia is supposed to be a place where even the most extreme ideas should, you know, be able to be had by some of these, you know, professionals, right? That's just what academia is supposed to be. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.